Hello, Qtron. Okay, you ask, why are we not talking about individuals? Well, obviously I do. I have an individualistic philosophy. I want to maximize individual liberties. I think this is one of the criteria we put on the system. But groups are made up of individuals, and how the individuals are combined is important. They aren't just summed. It could be a weighted sum. It could be a very complex situation. The parts of coal and diamond are the same, but the relationship between those parts is different, and therefore diamond is very different from coal. Much harder, happens to be much more valuable. People find it more beautiful, but the qualities definitely sum up differently. And this is what I think you're ignoring, is the relationships between the parts. And that's what we're talking about insofar as, I mean, we could take the conversation wherever and start other sub-conversations. When I say we're not talking, I'm not saying we can't talk about the individuals. I'm saying that the video that started this particular thread of mine was about doing a system analysis which looks at these sum totals. So we're looking at the sum totals. We're not looking, but does an individual fall from the top to the bottom? Do some individuals go from the bottom to the top, economically? Uh, that Why? Because it doesn't affect the statistics. The statistics at the top is, if there was a constant turnover in the wealthy, well, you'd probably see a different thing. You'd see wealthy people spending their money to create safety nets if it was really happening that much. It would change the system in that way through people's actions. But the statistical problem of all of these people that are getting less and less resources would be the same. So you can do a statistical analysis. It's not totally divorced from the individual, but we have done the individual analysis, and we are doing the statistical analysis, and we will go back and forth, and we will combine, analysis of both. Because, see, I don't want a system that's statistically fine, but individuals don't have rights, an economy that does great, but nobody, has free speech. So those questions are not being disvalued for all time, but in a 10-minute video, which was very open, you have to see too. I mean, I have criticism from the left that in that presentation I didn't immediately blame free market economics or this or that or the other thing. And I specifically said, I think in one of the videos you replied to, but maybe it was one of the other ones, that uh, that that's intentional. The solutions to this problem are open to anybody that wants to talk about how we'll have a balanced system where we don't have this unidirectional flow of resources over time. And I think that the growth of the whole pie is a way we ignore that, because that could be a band-aid on the problems which would occur much more quickly. But the fact is, you can look at the statistical situation and judge it. And I believe in doing this. I believe in looking at it from the statistical situation where you look at what's happening to groups. I believe in looking at it as an individualistic situation. You look at what's happening to individuals. And this particular concept is, I think, on the weak side of objectivism, where it doesn't really look at the relationships, you know. Now, resources are finite. You said, yes, they are, but not really. I don't understand how you can make a blanket statement about resources. There are so many kinds of resources. I don't know how you could say that, and you go on talking about if there is a shortage in silicon or oil, then the price would just go up. Yeah, because of the reaction of the fact that the resources are limited. Even if they're renewable, they only renew at a certain rate. Even if they're, for all intents and purposes, infinite at one scale, at another scale, they're not infinite. And so the price reacts to that. That's not evidence that they are infinite in principle. No, it's evidence that even if you treat them as infinite, then, the reality, the pragmatics of the market structure, you have to remember, I totally believe in markets. The difference is that I don't believe there's such a thing as an unregulated market. It comes from regulation. I mean, why are commodity markets so efficient? Because there's regulation, a definition of what grade A beef is. It doesn't have to say that you have to produce grade A beef. It just says if you're going to call it grade A beef, it has to have certain characteristics. Why? Just to enable the market to sell futures, make predictive so people can invest and decide, what they want to bet on, whether the crop's going to be good or bad, or maybe it'll be big, but there's not big at the top quality level, but big at the medium level, and you can make bets on these things. Those regulations are what enable the market to exist. Otherwise you couldn't have people that would buy tons of a high quality farm product, because they'd have to actually go there and inspect every kernel of corn. Instead, you have regulations about how this stuff has to be defined, and then you can have people that are trained in making that judgment according to the standard, and you can have a lot more freedom in fungibility ultimately in your market system. So some resources are very finite. Okay, some resources less so. All resources technically finite, but so I could just be making the argument of, they're all finite, but I agree, some of them can be dealt with as if they're less finite. You're going to see the prices of extraction go up. You're going to have trouble. Also, with something like oxygen, I noticed you just said most of the atmosphere would be privatized. I'm not really sure how that works for what we're talking about. If you pollute if the air on your property is your air and you pollute it, somebody else gets the air because it drifts over there, but that was your property then, and so you were justified to do whatever you wanted to it, but now you're breathing. Are you going to go to jail for breathing someone else's air? Are you going to have to build a plexiglass box so that you're breathing all your own air? I'm curious, how that's going to work. I think you have an example of something that has to be dealt with as a common resource just because of the way it moves around. We don't really have the choice of trapping it and controlling it the way we do other more normal property. So if a resource becomes expensive, that's not the same thing as it being unlimited. That's a reaction to the limitation. And you talked about production and trade as if you didn't see how that relates to circulation. Production and trade equals circulation. It's a way that things circulate. And you and I both, I think, believe that trade, is in a sense fundamentally good. It's a good thing that people are trading their production, their produced produced goods with other people. Now why? Well, because it's circulating. The resources are circulating, and someone can specialize and still benefit from that circulation through a cooperation. And you're jumping ahead, you're talking about the only question is if government involved. Yeah, if you're obsessed with government, but to me, I'm not. And one thing that freed me from that is realizing you could have the United States of America incorporated. It could own all the property the government owns. It could charge a fee, a package deal fee where you have to get it all or nothing, equal to or even in excess of the current taxes. And to you, then that's morally would be okay, even if it had the same exact results. And I don't believe that. I believe in judging things by results. You could have a system of no public police, no public fire. And if there were less fires that went out of control and there were more people that had access to the private roads than the public roads, I would judge that as a positive thing compared to some system based on compassion and nice sounding things that didn't achieve that. I don't really care what a system promises in principle to achieve if it doesn't achieve that. Okay, and I don't see whether it's called government or not as the fundamental question. To me, the fundamental question is how healthy of a system does it result in? Okay. The final thing, I am not resentful of other people more wealthy than myself. You're totally in the wrong region to address, what emotions I do have about this if you think they're resentful. I do not resent the wealthy. And just recently, I've been arguing against the idea of class warfare or that there's a problem with being wealthy and taking criticism from the left on that. And it's not a resentment. I'm happy for what I've been able to achieve.